Here to check you to your face. Sweetie, this is what I do on television every day, and thank you for watching.
That is true.
That's what I do, so I'm real. I am who I am.
Wendy,
I'm only
that's
doing what
with
I do
you. You
on
haven't been able to
television.
come back on him.
No, she can't.
You know what?
Judge me, her, she too high.
Because I am absolutely.
She too high. That's why she can't, sweetie.
The way that you're reacting, you have to understand.
Denial.
Is
denial.
The way that I'm acting is a person who knows that their reputation was defamed by you for 2 hours with Chris Rock behind my back based on trash tabloids. The way that I'm acting is that I came here today
you for
and
2
then
hours,
you tried
Josh.
to talk about it for 20 minutes after I dispelled it to you in 30 seconds. I've worked long and hard to overcome the streets of Detroit. I went from jail to the 15 years to the youngest judge in America, and I'll be damned if I'm gonna let you or anybody else defame my reputation with this nonsense.
Were you
and
backstage
trying
at
to
the
make up
BET
stories
Awards with
and
gators and all like that?
continuing to fuel rumors that are untrue. That's why I'm checking you and anybody else to do it. And this nut over here that keeps making noise while I'm talking, I'm gonna get on him in a minute.
Anti-Afro Spengalis. I just had to play that portion of Judge Mathis, who sent Wendy Williams packing, because it certainly represents how I'm feeling right now. I'm giving whoever's listening, friend or foe, a huge thank you for tuning in. That means you're interested. And it's also reflected in the number of people who continue subscribing to the channel. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. This is part 2 of the Green-Eyed Monstrosities. And those of you out there who are not interested, I'm making sure the screen or the graphic will be green. That way, when you see the color, you can just skip. But obviously, many of you are very interested in the series, and it will continue. So today, we're going to talk about law enforcement involvement in these YouTube streets. And of course, there was feedback that came through on some screenshots that you all sent, and you included a link to a video that was entitled Anti-Afro Spengalis is Crazy as Hell. And the person who recorded the video is Sometimes I Get Carried Away. 2 of her comments are being highlighted, along with the beautiful Bernice. Sometimes I Get Carried Away not only was booted from AS channel for being very disrespectful after I had requested respectfully that she honor the channel guidelines, and she just refused. But very interestingly, as she was booted, she hijacked a phrase and used it as her new screen name, because this was not the original screen name that she had when she was on the channel. And there she goes to another channel to launch this video, but she went off to another live stream, and this is where mainly she's leaving her comments. But these particular comments were left under that video, and she's still in a temper tantrum state. But it's interesting, her comments are absolutely relevant to the topic of law enforcement involvement in these YouTube streets. So let's get to it. I'm not saying never call the cops. I'm talking about trying to destroy people for regular, smegular keyboard thugging. As you know, if you tune in regularly to this channel, that I have engaged law enforcement for some very serious threats that have been made against my life. And this is an interesting comment, because this, I think, actually reflects more of what Sometimes I Get Carried Away believes when it comes to her value and her safety. It can't possibly be related to me, Because how could she be in a position to evaluate for me what I perceive to be a threat to my well-being? So it really doesn't make any sense. So here's a perfect time for me to put on the screen the contact information for law enforcement if you ever feel that you have been set upon in terms of threats, harassment, intimidation, doxing, anything at all that you feel has impacted your ability to safely exist in these spaces on or off YouTube. By all means, make those calls either to your local police department or to the FBI, who has jurisdiction over crimes that occur on the internet. So I have to make sure that resource is provided, or those resources are provided. Get back to sometimes they get carried away. Destroy people for regular smegular keyboard thuggery. Let's talk about the word destroying. When I call the police, it's because a threat has been made. Say I call and I'm lying. It didn't even happen. I completely made it up. That would be potentially destroying someone's life. Because I'm making a false police report and it sounds real convincing. That has a real potential to destroy someone's life. That person very well and should turn right around and file a police report against me because I completely lied and made it up. But when you call the police because someone has done something, that person engaged in the activity, and if found culpable, they were the ones that destroyed their own life. That would not be the victim's fault. It sounds like there's some guilt going on associated with assuming a role in ensuring one's own safety. But that is sometimes I get carried away's issue. I have never felt an ounce of guilt for calling law enforcement because someone has threatened me. I can't even conceive of that. Maybe sometimes I get carried away, has a story to tell, let her tell it. But she doesn't have a story to tell as far as what I have been through. So she can't possibly impose upon me what I would be feeling when somebody threatens my life. Now, there are people, you can threaten them all day long and they aren't going to call the police. Perhaps this is the position that sometimes I get carried away is in, because when you heard that video, it was very interesting. The discomfort about the police being called. And yes, I get it. That's a history with our people. But to me, I think it's really sad if you are going to internalize that history to the point where you feel you cannot seek help after you are threatened. I can't imagine living like that. But I can see, though, if someone is living like that, it could create some internalized feelings that come out as anger towards other people. So maybe this is what's going on, but that's not my issue to reconcile. That's for sometimes I get carried away to reconcile. And yes, I'm sure it's also related to her being angry about being booted, although she was disrespectful. But it doesn't sound like she's willing to be responsible for much of anything, although she's willing to hijack my phrases as she exits the channel. And again, people deciding to engage in criminal behavior, they're destroying their own lives. It wouldn't have anything to do with me. So let's go to the second comment. It comes from the beautiful Bernice, which says, I absolutely agree. She is a bully that throws rocks and hides, that throw rocks and hide behind others. That's very interesting. Just so you know, Bernice, we both have sat in live streams and were moderators. Very interesting people, because there became an issue of trust and treachery that was related to a person that she's very close to. And obviously, Bernice aligned with this person who has a negative influence on her. But that's between them. But it wasn't going to be something I was going to be impacted by. So I made my decision. So they decide they're going to engage in this very childish behavior. The other person is not a moderator, but Bernice is a moderator, as was I in these live streams. So it got to the point where Bernice started actually using the F word towards me in these live streams. But when she would do these things with this other person, of course I would speak up. I would tell the host. I wouldn't disrupt the live stream, okay, and call her names or use the F word on her. I wouldn't do that. I would make comments, but they would not be in any way the way she was making comments. She continued with this behavior. So eventually, to me, it's not worth it. I left. Interesting that there is one live stream where she is also a moderator and I'm a moderator. She wouldn't dare in a million years try that behavior. Who is the bully? You ask the question. She thought she had some security behind her and what she was doing. But if you're a bully, how would you stand up and say, you know what? Someone is doing this. I don't like it. Take care of it. That is not being a bully. That's being assertive in response to being bullied. I wasn't accepting it. She had a perception of power, but was frustrated because I didn't accept the behavior. I left that environment. This actually turned out to be a huge boost of support for me because I get to spend more time in 2 other live streams where I can't even imagine anything like this happening, and it never has happened, where the support is incredibly positive. It's a lot more work in those live streams, but it goes faster and you don't have to worry about a supposed colleague attacking you. The environment that I'm in now, where she was not as frequently present when I became moderator. She backed off. Interesting, because she knew she would not be able to do what she was doing in the other spaces. But if you're doing the right thing, why would you change your behavior? That's the issue. A bully does things that he or she can get away with in certain spaces, but she's not doing that in this space. Let me explain yesterday, because yesterday we had a live stream. I don't remember if she was there, because I try not to even pay attention. I wouldn't be surprised if she wasn't. Maybe she was, I don't know. But I know she has not been as frequently present since I became moderator in that space. We were having a fierce debate. People were giving their opinions. And let me say this. I have never had any issue with people disagreeing in spaces. My issue has always been whether or not the host manages it effectively. That's been my issue. People can disagree. So we're all giving our opinions about a hot topic, which I'm not going to mention the topic. Okay. I want to take the conversation off course. And somebody decides they want to come for me personally. That can be seen as bullying. So I just reasserted the position as a moderator. Oh, we're sticking to the topic. Don't leave any personal comments for me or others. So I included everybody. But the host, before I hit send, that can be seen as bullying. So I just reasserted the position as a moderator. Oh, we're sticking to the topic. Don't leave any personal comments for me or others. So I included everybody. But the host, before I hit send, I hit send, but the host came out, the host too, came up and just very firmly reaffirmed, because this is what they do at beginning of every show, reestablished, made it very clear we do not do that here. So these are kinds of things that Bernice wouldn't like, because there's a boundary set. She wouldn't be able to do the things that she was doing. So she's less frequent in that space. Another aspect that was missed that caused a concern with respect to the situation with Bernice is when you're moderating for a channel, it's crucial that you back the person you're moderating. How can that be if you go off to other spaces and you moderate for people who are considered to be enemy? In my view, that ends up drawing enemies together in a space. And when that's not managed well, or when a moderator's effort to address that is disregarded or considered hostile, that doesn't work out well for the host. And that is another issue that I had. But again, everybody doesn't look at things the same. So when there's a mismatch, there's a mismatch. But I will never understand how anybody could moderate in a space and consider that person one that you're down with, and then you go off and moderate for the enemy. It just goes to show we're shorn from two different cloths. As far as hiding behind others, I wouldn't be hiding behind others, as I just stated, if I'm the one speaking up in response to something that's being done that I think needs to be addressed. I'm speaking up. No one else is speaking up for me. I'm saying it. So how would that be hiding behind others? And this is plural. I'm the one that's speaking up. No one else spoke up for me, which I wouldn't expect them to do. If somebody is doing something to me in that moment, I speak up. Or I will address the situation at a later date. This is what happened. I'm letting you know. That's not cool. As the channel host, I expect this to stop. Pretty much is what I would say. Why wouldn't I say that? How is that hiding behind somebody? That's being mature. That's being an adult. That's expecting something to be remedied. That's supposedly against the rules. I actually would have to agree in one respect. The only people I would be hiding behind would be law enforcement, but that wouldn't be related to this situation. So the only people I would say I'm hiding behind would be law enforcement in the event someone threatens me. As far as hiding behind anybody else, the rules apply to everybody when it comes to conduct in the live streams where I'm moderating for a few others, and there's no way in hell I don't think she'd even go over there. And they sure as hell would, like, who the blankety blank are you? She would not go over there and try that. I mean, they would get her before I could. People stay out of spaces where they know they can't get away with the things that they do ordinarily. Again, I ask the question, who is the bully? Also, I want to say, if people sit around, whoever they are, and just go on and on and on and on and talk about people and say whatever they want, then the people decide to say, hey, wait a minute, I'm answering that, like I'm doing now. They want to consider that bullying, but they don't want to consider the nastiness, the vile, disgusting, reprehensible lies that they tell about you as bullying. Because making up lies about people is bullying, but defending yourself, that's bullying. I mean, it's a tactic that people use to try to shut you down from defending yourself. I hope if you are experiencing something like this, you don't allow that to happen. Of course, you would never want to respond to every single thing people say. I mean, that's ridiculous. Who has time to do that? I certainly don't. But these are, in particular, issues I definitely wanted to bring up because it involves safety. It involves defending your rights. If people want to mischaracterize you defending yourself as a bully. So let's go to the third comment. Sometimes I get carried away says, I know, but she's the only one who gets mad. No one else is calling the cops and trying to get people fired because someone called them a mean name. Well, first off, I know, but she's the only one who gets mad. You know what? I don't even think that statement warrants a response. Although I think it can be seen as a generalized comment. Given the tantrum state, I don't even think I'm going to respond to that. No one else is calling the cops and trying to get people fired because someone called them a mean name. Okay, so she's kind of mixing two things here. No one else. Well, I can name another person who's called the. Actually, I can name several people. Not that I have to explain this to. Sometimes I get carried away. Gerald Palmer has called the police, and there have been multiple people who have called law enforcement. It's none of her business who's called law enforcement. But here again, she's trying to devalue the significance of people defending themselves against attacks and threats. And again, if you listen to that video that she posted, it is her fear, her hesitation, her refusal to acknowledge that risks do occur in our community. The police do need to be called. Violence is out of control. And it is not a nuisance. If you feel threatened, you hear people saying they're coming for your life, you have every right to call law enforcement. If she doesn't feel that way, again, that is her feeling that way. She cannot impose that on me or you. And I think it's outrageous that somebody would even think they can impose that on you, that you not call law enforcement. So they're actually trying to transpose their feelings of worthlessness, that their life is not valuable. Their life is below the person who threatened them, and they want you to join them. If you decide that you feel differently, that's invoking anger. Why? Because they don't have the guts to stand up for themselves? Well, if she doesn't have the guts to stand up for herself, she doesn't have the guts to stand up for herself. I don't call this standing up for herself. She's joining a crowd. She's joining a chorus of illogical people who cannot tolerate it when someone stands up and says, like I'm saying, no, I'm going to speak up. Then you come out with this calling the cops and wasting the police time. Again, if sometimes I get carried away, doesn't feel valuable enough within herself to get law enforcement involved when someone threatens her life, that's her. She can't impose that upon me. And then she says, and trying to get people fired because someone called them a mean name. Well, this is where sometimes I get carried away as telling a lie, because I've never called anyone's job ever to get them fired because they called me a mean name. Who is she referring to? She's trying to refer to me, and she's telling you a bald-faced lie. I called one person's employer who threatened to kill me, threatened me with violence, and doxed me. This person stated that he was working at home, from home rather. So yeah, there would be a concern that your employee is using your electronic equipment from home to dox people during the day and threaten to kill people and threaten people with violence. Again, Sometimes I get carried away, may have a problem doing that. I certainly didn't. And then get people fired because they called a mean name. Well, I'm surmising that she's referring to binary code and the racial attacks, the gorilla bitch and the blackity black comments and the misogyny and the homophobia and the attacks on the disabled. As a special ed teacher, okay, she reduces that down to a mean name. Okay. And also, lies again. I've never called binary code school. There are regulations against this behavior. I simply reported, which I have every legal right to do, the facts. If she wants to interpret that into getting someone fired, she completely absolves the culprit of responsibility to abide by regulations that he signed on the dotted line for. That is not my responsibility. What ends up happening, I filed a complaint within the confines of the law. Now, if sometimes I get carried away, is perfectly comfortable with men trashing, degrading her, that's her business. That has nothing to do with me. Again, people, don't allow anybody to guilt you out of your rights. She doesn't like you talking about abuse. She doesn't like you talking about your civil rights. This is a person who doesn't feel she needs to be acknowledged for the rights that she has. That is her issue. That should not be yours. That is a very good reason why I call this the green-eyed monstrosities. Know your rights. Protect your rights. Defend your rights. Above all, heed the warning. Fire. Be